Welcome to the Global Speaker Advantage, the #1 podcast where your voice goes beyond borders. Hosted by Oliver Shum, international speaker and coach, this show is for speakers ready to grow influence, land paid gigs, and make a global impact. Tune in every Tuesday and Friday weekly for insights, interviews, and strategies to help you thrive on the world stage. Let's go global.
Welcome to the Global Speakers Advantage podcast. Today is another exciting edition. My name is Oliver Shum, and with me in the studio is a phenomenal guest. She is the first female in-person guest we are hosting ever, and she has been with us in the whole project from the early days of the creation and innovation. And she is Hannah Holden. Welcome, Anna.
Thanks so much, Oliver, for having me.
Great. We're so delighted to have you. In behalf of my entire team, we want to say thank you for creating time to be here with us today to share your experience and to inspire and challenge, of course, our audience around the world with your story and with your message. To begin, Anna, I would like to know, what is your one word? Like, what is that one word that describes your entire being, like that describes you, describe the work you do, and describe the services you offer to your clients?
I think I'll have to go with purpose for that.
Oh.
That's a big part of my story personally,
Okay.
but also I think just what drives what I do with myself, but also with my clients.
Yeah, I've personally observed that you're so obsessed about purpose, and I love that. So who is Anna? You want to let our audience know who you are?
Sure, I can
Great.
start and tell you a little bit about myself.
Great,
So,
awesome.
as Oliver mentioned, I'm Hannah. My name is Hannah Holden, and I'm from Minnesota. So that's where Oliver and I have crossed paths. I know he's very international, but this is where our stories intersected.
Yeah.
I grew up here in Minnesota, and I went into the Marine Corps right after high school. And I know I'm talking to an international audience, so maybe you're familiar with our military service, maybe you're not, but the Marine Corps is a branch of one of our militaries. And I went into the Marine Corps right out of high school. And it's funny that Oliver is saying that I'm the first female in the studio, because I thought, you know what, I should mention this for context for this audience, that when I went into the Marine Corps, it was only about 5% women at that time. So the Marine Corps is made up 95% male, at least the time when I went into the military. So I went into the Marine Corps at 18. I was in the military for 5 years and did 3 tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. And that was actually my first exposure with public speaking, because I did a lot of public speaking in the military, and that was actually a part of my role. I was an intelligence analyst, and so a big part of that role was doing public intelligence briefings to military leadership. And I was so young at the time, but I learned a lot of kind of those foundational skills at such a young age around speaking. Now, it's a little bit different than what I do now, but that's kind of where I got my early start. And I know we talked about purpose, but after I got out of the Marine Corps, I found myself searching for purpose for many years. And I was really searching outside of myself, kind of looking to other people, asking them, hey, do you know who I am? Do you know what my purpose is? Really kind of outsourcing my power to other people by asking those types of questions. But the big shift happened in my life when I went from looking for my purpose outside of myself to really going within and getting to know myself, beginning to build a relationship with myself and figure out who am I beyond all the external expectation. And when I was able to do that, that is really when my life started to change. And I realized that it wasn't so much about finding my purpose, it was about creating my purpose in my life. So I started a business in 2020 called In Spirit. And when I first found that name, I think sometimes people hear that and they're like, is that inspired, or is that some sort of spiritual connotation? They might wonder what that means. But I chose In Spirit because of a definition I read, which is to fill with courage or strength of purpose. And so I started there, and it's been quite the journey. That was 2020. So when I started in 2020, I originally started doing life coaching. from there, I grew into doing corporate team building and leadership development. I do work with military veterans around creating their purpose after the military. And really lately, and this is how we cross paths, is really trying to build out the speaking side of my business more, not just the team building workshops, but really put my message out there on a bigger scale.
I love that. And just let you know, Anna is a member of the National Speakers Association of Minnesota chapter, and pretty good. So being a member of the National Speaker Minnesota chapter, she does a lot of speaking, she learns a lot, and she shares a lot because the chapter meeting, of course, is every month. And it's been an amazing journey with all our speakers from the National Speakers chapter of Minnesota. And so, Anna, you've been a Marine in the military, and what experience did you have right there in your military days that shaped your leadership to be becoming so unapologetic?
There's a lot that I could say, I think, to answer this question, but I'm just going to try to go with my gut reaction to this question.
Okay.
The military undoubtedly really shaped me because it got me when I was 18. You're young, you're impressionable, and it really shapes you. And I had a lot of experiences that I think stuck with me, really influenced me a lot.
Okay.
I think being so young and being exposed to leadership, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know. I worked for people who were just incredible leaders, inspirational, also, you know, very strategic. You know, leaders that really care about who you are and, you know, taking care of you, those types of leaders. And then I also worked with leaders that were maybe very incompetent or had serious character flaws. So I think I've seen that spectrum and what the impact of that is because of that exposure. But I think something that impacted me about being in the Marine Corps and then later going to work in leadership development is that one thing about the military, but not just any military, but the Marine Corps specifically, is that you are expected to be a leader from day one.
Oh.
So you are not given a free pass. It's not until you get your first promotion or you get your first title, leadership title. They train you on leadership from the very beginning. And so it's very much ingrained into the culture and how they shape people from the very beginning. And so I think that really influenced me because it made me realize that you don't have to wait to be given the title or be given permission. You actually can decide, okay, I'm ready to lead now, and I'm going to lead based on, you know, leading by example, self-leadership. So I think having some of that in my background made me realize that there is something about leadership beyond a title. And I don't think that's really what's taught in corporate. In corporate, a lot of times what happens is people show technical competence, so they get promoted or they get a leadership position, but they're not necessarily taught how to be leaders. They're taught how to be managers or how to be very capable in their jobs. And so I think a lot of times it's not until later when they're in a leadership position and then they're like, well, wait, well, what about the leadership skills? I don't have the experience in that.
Okay.
So I hope that's enough depth, but
yeah. So, and you did not only end at the level of the military, you also have you had an experience with the corporate America.
Yeah, so I think it was actually a really stark contrast because I went from being in the Marine Corps where it was this idea of everyone's a leader, but another piece of that is that leadership isn't just about, oh, did you do your job? Let me check and make sure you did everything. Leadership there is very much about looking out for the welfare of people. So it's about the whole person, not just whether or not you did your job. So that's a distinction I want to make because in the Marine Corps, as a leader, you're responsible for people and not just 8 to 5, right? You're responsible to that whole person. So I think when I got out of the Marine Corps and I went to college as an adult student and I got my first corporate role, my first corporate role was at JP Morgan. And I was just a little surprised when I got my first corporate role because I realized that it was not like that at all. And leadership was not necessarily the priority. It was much more about management. Of course, there were people I encountered who had tremendous leadership skills, but it wasn't the same environment. And so I think going into that corporate world, to other people, it would just feel normal because they'd never seen anything different. But to me, going into the corporate world, I was a little bit shocked that leadership wasn't embedded into the culture.
Okay, I see. Like right now, you are the owner of Inspirit, and at the same time, you're a consultant and a team builder trainer, and you move across the different states and you train organizations and systems. So, you are right now unapologetic. Now, what experience did you actually gather in the course of this transitioning that you can actually share with somebody out there listening to us now, who is timid, who is stuck, who is stagnant, and want to make shifts in his or life?
Yeah, I think that we all get stuck at times. I think
Yeah.
it's just, I think we get stuck, unstuck,
Yeah.
so many
Exactly.
times.
It's
Yes,
like
and it's
this.
like, yeah, it's the ups and downs. And I don't think no matter where you get in life or what you achieve that
Yep.
you're just suddenly absolved of that. I think we always go through cycles. It's cyclical. But I think that when I described that I was searching for my purpose all of those years, like I was stuck because I was looking for someone else to give me the answer.
Oh, okay.
And in a way, I was giving my power away by waiting for permission, waiting for someone else to give me the answer. But I think when I got unstuck was when I realized, like, there's nobody coming. There's nobody going to grant me permission to do what I want to do. I have to start to give myself permission. And I think a big part of that is about self-leadership. I think that there was a time in my life where the only goals that I had were goals that other people had given me. So my life was very externally directed. I mean, you think about the military, you're given your mission, you're given your goals, you know, your objective. But I think that a lot of people, we operate that way because that's what we know. It's whether it be the school gives us our goals, our targets to hit, our workplace gives us our targets to hit. But it wasn't until I started asking myself those questions of, you know, what's important to me? What are my goals? What is the vision I have for my life? And that is really what helped me find more power and more purpose and kind of becoming more unapologetic, was when I started to kind of take things into my own hands and set my own goals. You know, I think a lot of people, no matter what career they're in, can sometimes get stuck by the goals that other people are setting, and they're not setting their goals for themselves. So I think it's setting your own goals. I think it's creating a vision for your life. I think another big piece of stuckness is fear. There's a lot of fear, and fear is just a part of life, you know, but I think also I used to be in a position where I was more driven by fear. And I just did a podcast episode on this yesterday, but I have a podcast
cool.
which I can mention, but the podcast is called Self-Ruled. But I just did an episode on this because a lot of times it's our fear that's driving us and it's not our desire pulling us. So that was another big shift where I felt like a lot of the things that I was doing that kept me stuck was more like, let me do this so I don't end up here, or let me do this so this negative thing doesn't happen, versus really asking myself, what do I desire in my life, and allowing myself to kind of be pulled by my desires.
Okay. Pretty clear. Like, you know, I'm actually reminded, growing up in Africa as a young man, I had a dream. I had two dreams. I had a dream I talked about it all the time. And of course, I hope you know the dream. And I had a dream that I just kept it for myself. So the dream I talked about it all the time was to become a global speaker. And when I shared this dream with my dad, my parents were like, "No, that's not gonna give you money." So I'm like, okay. So I remember my dad suggested I should become a medical doctor. It's fascinating to be a medical doctor, but that's not really something I'm passionate about. And I told my dad, if I become a medical doctor, I'm gonna get the certificate and give it to you as a gift, and then I'll continue with my speaking stuff. And I remember we had a back and front conversation and all of that. Long story short, at the end of the day, they were like, "Okay, wish you good luck with your public speaking." And at the time, there was no speaker in Cameroon that I knew that I could look up to as a coach, as a mentor, as a role model. So I remember I talked about becoming a speaker, and people always tell me, "Hey, there's no speaker in the country as of now. Speaking doesn't pay in Africa." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, I'm like, okay. Anyhow, I'm gonna start. I could be a first speaker. I could make sure I pay. And they were right, because I spoke for 10 years, like 2010, 2020, no fee, like. So it was crazy. So why in the village, a village is like a tribe. most of the time I will hear an aircraft flying in the sky, woo, right in the night. And at times, in the day, I try to see the aircraft. I never saw it. You know what I mean? Like, so I could only see the roots. You know, the small roots passing. You know, children in Africa and people who grow in Africa will quickly identify with this story. So one day I just promised myself that one day I want to fly aircraft, like just want to fly. And I've gone like 25 years with that dream. And finally I started my pilot training. And it was so scary to do this. Like, it was so scary. Like, so looking at your story from uniform to unapologetic, Anna, there are a lot of people right now listening to us. They're so scared to do the things they have been telling people they're going to do the things they have dreamed all their lives to do. But look at you here, like you're touching lives not only in the United States, but getting cross borders. Even right now in the Global Speaker Advantage Podcast, you're touching lives of people around the world. So what advice can you give, especially women watching us that got dreams, you know, that they feel like they're limited, maybe they're confined somewhere and they can only see themselves just like, okay, this is all I can do, this is all I am, and they have such limiting mindsets, such limiting thoughts. What can you do for them to uncover their potentials and begin to become unapologetics in their lives?
Right. I think that a lot of this comes down to perception of power. So a lot of times we have this perception that we don't have power in a given situation. And I've been guilty of that because sometimes it's easier to displace the power onto someone else and say, okay, I didn't do it because of that person. You know, it could be the person I'm with, my relationship. It could be a boss. It could be a life situation, and say, I'm not doing this because of someone else. But a lot of times when we do that, we're really giving our power away. And so I think the advice I would give is to really challenge yourself to look at, you know, how can you look at your situation differently? I think a lot of times when we're up against an obstacle, we only have a few choices. We either have to live with things as they are, we change things, or sometimes we have to change the way we see things. So, and sometimes it's a combination of all of them, but I think what I would say is change the way you're looking at your situation, change the way that you're seeing yourself, change the way you're assigning power, you're giving other people power. I think that we have far more power than a lot of times we acknowledge. I think about, I don't know if you've ever read Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. This is it's been a long time since I've read the book, but you think about a man who was in a concentration camp, you know, in Nazi Germany, and he couldn't change his circumstances. He wasn't getting out of this concentration camp, so he had to change the way he looked at things, the way he looked at his experience. So much of our experience in life is being created by the thoughts that we think, the stories we tell ourselves about our experience, and oftentimes it's the stories we're telling ourselves about our life experience or the situation that we're in that are harming us more than our actual circumstances. And so when you hear it from someone like that who lived in those just unbelievable conditions, it makes me realize that any situation I'm in, if I don't like the situation I'm in, then I have the power to change the way I look at my circumstances.
I love that. And that's really so powerful. You know, there was an experiment done with a grasshopper. You've ever seen a grasshopper physically?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I used to hunt for grasshoppers growing up. So they caught a grasshopper, cock it in the bottle like this, and so it was allowed there for kind of 24 hours, and so they opened up, you know, and it was unable to dive. It was unable to do the activities that it used to do before. And that simply tells us that, you know, the situation where you are right now, the conditions within your environment can actually affect your potentials, your destiny, and how far you can go in life. Like when you come out, like look at the grasshopper, it came out, but it was unable to dive again, to soar, to jump, to the height. It had the capacity and the potential to jump. And when you're talking, that's exactly what I was saying. There are a lot of people listening to us right now And if they could only realize how stronger, powerful, capable they are to what they can do, unlike what they are not able to do. It's a little bit like you have the ability to operate at 100 scale, like 100% scale, and you're only struggling around 1 and 2. So, Hannah, let's do just this conversation. Right? What can somebody do listening to us right now and he feels that he's not living up to his potential? He's not living up to his abilities. He's not living up to his dreams. He feels like he has a lot or she has a lot, but again, only little is being done. And looking at the circumstances around them, they just have a lot of pressure coming from friends, family, peers, and the nation and all of that. What recommendation, what steps can somebody listening to us right now begin to take to be able to outwardly and fully begin to live what they have always loved to do?
Well, the first thing I want to comment on is the pressure maybe from outside, outside of ourselves. It could be, like you said, pressure from family or friends. I think as humans, we have this innate desire to want to be loved, accepted, belong. And so sometimes when we have a dream or a vision for our life that threatens that in some way, like maybe it requires to step out of maybe the comfort zone we have within a certain friend group or family. Maybe we feel like, okay, if I challenge myself and I step out, then I don't fit with these people anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that can be almost like the tribal part of us as humans. We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we fit with other people. But the reality is that sometimes you will have to, I don't want to say you have to leave people behind, but if you really want to pursue a dream, you're not going to please everyone. And you're not everyone's going to get it. And you can't really live your life, trying to get people to. The other thing is you can't live your life trying to get your friends and family to believe in what you're doing. Because I know we've talked on the phone about this before, Oliver, but a lot of times it's not the people closest to you that are going to be your biggest supporters or the people that are the first ones to buy your product or service. A lot of times it's going to be that person that's 2 or 3 degrees removed from the people closest to you. So I think about the first coaching client that I ever had with life coaching. It was someone that my older brother went to high school with, so it was a couple degrees, but she was never one of my close friends. So just realize that if your family or your friends or your inner circle don't get it, you don't need them to get it because they're probably not your customer. Whatever you're selling, if you're selling speaking, ideas, a product, a service, they're probably not, if they don't get it, they're probably just not your right customer. So don't live for their expectations because you'll be living for something that you may never receive. You may never receive that validation from those people. And so what I would say instead is to more so focus on what it is that you really want. And I know a lot of times even when we figure that out, we kind of wrestle with ourselves because it can bring up a lot of fear and uncertainty to go after that thing. But you have to get that clarity on what it is that you really want for your life and really block out the noise from everyone else. So I think that's a big part of it. And the other part of your question is you asked about, what about someone who's maybe at a 1 or 2 out of the scale of how much 100, how much potential that they really have. And I think that a lot of people don't think big enough. They don't dream big enough. And so I want to tell you that one thing I love to say is that you need to be unrealistic when it comes to your dreams and your vision. You need to write it down on a piece of paper and be like, wow, that seems delusional, the first time you write it. But if you write it down the first time and it feels delusional, you write it 100 more times over the course of a year, it's not going to feel so delusional anymore.
That's right.
And because you've been programming yourself and you've been, brainwashing, I say brainwash yourself into believing that it's possible. And the more you think those thoughts, the more you write those things down, the more that you have things in your environment that remind you of your full potential, these are all cues that are reflecting back to you that this is possible for you. So don't be realistic at all when it comes to setting your vision, setting your goals. Aim higher than you possibly could imagine, because if you set a really big vision for your life, over time, you will become the person that is capable of achieving that.
I love that. boom. That's it. We are setting our viewers and listeners all around the world for something bigger. Like, there is no way you can listen to this podcast in end of the episode, at the end of the day, your life remains the same. I think there should not be a reason for that, because we are actually bringing in guests and speakers that they know what to do, and they challenging you every single time to dream big. And we have been consistently saying you have to dream big. And there's part of the brain called the RAS, the reticular activating system. It's so powerful. It helps you. It's like this. When you talk about environment, okay. So if you grew up in an environment where there's a lot of poverty, it means that anytime you see a rich person, you say that this success is not normal. They'll always accuse people who are very successful that this is witchcraft, this is not real, they have done something somewhere, maybe they're stealing money somewhere. That's the mindset, because the reticular activating system always fight back what they have not been programmed to do and to see all the time. And so when you are in an environment where people don't validate, people don't clap for you, people don't really tell you that this thing you're doing is great, and all they can tell you is that you are crazy, you're stupid, this is not gonna work, like Hannah said, move. And that's exactly what I did. Like, the other day, I was discussing with my wife, and she asked me a question, Hannah. She's like, Oliver, who's your best friend? Guess what I told her? I'm like, well, I don't have a best friend. It was crazy. Like, you were like, what do you mean? Like, so probably she was expecting me to say something like, X is my best friend. I'm like, I don't have a best friend. You know why? Because the people I thought they were my best friend, at time my dream just scared them. And we break out, because I'm the kind of person that if my dream scares you, then we don't have anything to do together. And that's why you actually inspired me a lot, Anna. When I listened to your podcast, there was an edition you talked so much about setting unrealistic goals. You remember one of the episode you did, setting unrealistic goals, and that really reassured my dream and my desire to become a pilot. And that's one of the reasons why I went into that. And so you challenge me all the time. I listen to your podcast to do more, because, well, it's better to dream more. And at least if you don't get all of that, at least you get somewhere closer. It's like aiming the sky, right? Remember the story about the stars and the moons? Yeah, so you have to aim for the moon, so that if you don't reach at the moon, you at least reach at somewhere around the stars. So that's so powerful. I just wanted to reiterate on that point of environment. You have to select your environment, and if people don't validate or don't believe in you, go where they can believe in you. Honestly, you just have to get the people that can believe in you, because again, you have only one life to live, right? Just one life. Right. So you have to get the best shot at every given second. So moving forward, now we're still looking at from uniform to unapologetic.
Sure.
So we are having a very high percentage of women folk out there listening to us right now, and we have a lot of people in the corporates, even in corporate America, and we have a lot of people. Some actually are thinking of retirement, and some have retired already, and they're like thinking, okay, what next? What next? Some are thinking of reconsidering a different career path, because like you'll be surprised that up to 55% of people that go to work every day, especially in the corporate, they don't love what they are doing. Quote me anywhere. Yeah. And when I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill somewhere in 2017, I learned from that book that if you ask 100 people you meet around the street, what do you think you were born to be doing with your life? Out of 100, only about 2% would tell you with clarity and with certainty that this is what is my purpose. This is what I was born to do. And the rest, 98, would not tell you with clarity what they were meant to be doing. That is mind-blowing. So mind-blowing. So what do you have to say to the people listening to us right now, and they're not happy? They don't love doing what they're doing. They're doing that for the sake of paying bills, putting food on the table, handling the urgent things. And if nothing is done, that's how they will live their lives, just like that. So what do you have to say? You actually move, because you are the best person to talk about this. You actually move from being in a uniform, from being in a corporate America, to being your own boss. So tell us something, Anna.
So I think that what keeps a lot of people in a job that they don't love or that they feel is stealing their soul is because it's fear, but it's also, I think, this tension between the human need for security and the human need for freedom. And when I talk about freedom, which is my top personal value, I feel like a lot of times people crave freedom. They crave that freedom to be their own boss, or freedom to pursue a career that they're passionate about, pursue, something creative, whatever it may be. They have this passion and they want that freedom to pursue it. But a lot of times what happens is that it's very natural, but our human instincts kick in and we think, well, if I pursue that, then I'm giving something up. I'm giving up the security of the job that I had. And so a lot of times that journey is, am I willing to take the risk and step out of what I know and what is comfortable and where I have financial security, and take a risk to do something that maybe I can't prove it's going to happen? So there's a lot I could say about this, but a lot of times you have to be able to take a step in the direction of something that you want before you can actually see it. You have to believe in something before you can actually see the proof of it. But that doesn't mean that path is easy. It doesn't mean it's a straight line. I will tell you that if you decide to pursue entrepreneurship, you decide to pursue something that's kind of going against the grain, it's not necessarily going to be easy.
Absolutely.
It comes with its ups and downs, but that's life no matter what you do. And so I think for me, I had to own the fact that I would rather pursue what I want to do, pursue my own business, and have those ups and downs on my own terms, versus be somewhere where I didn't feel like I was living my purpose and still go through the ups and downs. So, I mean, life is going to have moments of suffering. Life is going to have beautiful moments, but it's kind of up to you. Do you want to be somewhere? Do you want to stay somewhere that you know you no longer belong? I think about this a lot because I don't think you can force yourself to make a move until it's time. So a lot of this is timing. But once you know it, so this is for the people that you know that you're staying somewhere, you no longer belong. You kind of have to have that conversation with yourself of, what is keeping me here? What is keeping me somewhere where I clearly know I no longer belong? I belong somewhere else. I'm here for something more. I know I need to grow beyond this. But it's that fear. But I think just having that heart to heart with yourself. I'll share this analogy because I thought it was so powerful. One of the first coaching clients I ever had, I'll never forget this. He used this analogy of a free bird running back into a cage. And I'll just never forget this because I guess he was somewhere in Minnesota hunting where they basically are domesticated. I don't know if it was pheasants or what, but you can go there and bird hunt, right?
Okay.
But one thing he observed, I guess, at this property was that the birds would be free from their cage, but a lot of times they would run back in.
Okay.
And so I think stick with me here, but sometimes as humans, we have our freedom. And I think even on my entrepreneurial journey, I've experienced this because I get freedom from the cage. I get that taste. I'm like, this is good. But then sometimes the fear drives us back into the cage because we're like, well, at least I know I get fed there. I might be in a little 3x3 cage, but at least I get fed there. And it's sometimes that we're more comfortable with the certainty, even if we're unhappy, and we're really struggling to grasp the uncertainty. But I think this is personal to you. It's going to be personal to every person that's listening. But at some point, you're going to have to decide, which life do you want to lead? If you look back on your life in a year, 5 years, 10 years, will you be proud that you stayed put, that you stayed in that cage? Or will you be proud of the risks that you took and maybe even the failures that came with that, knowing that when you got that instinct to move from where you were, that you listened to yourself and you trusted yourself? So,
okay. Yeah, that's really, really inspiring. Yeah. You know, um, as a man of faith, I believe that I believe in the Holy Spirit. So what happens is that knowing, you talked about knowing the right time to move. Like, when is the right time to take that decision, to take that movement, to take that shift? Because again, if you miss the time, any other thing would not happen at the time it was supposed to happen. So when it was my time to resign from the corporate jobs I've done in the past, I just heard that little voice. It's time to move. And I obeyed that voice. And any other person was like, you're crazy. Like, why did you do that? Like, where do you keep your family? Where do you keep this? How will you do this? How will you do that? But again, there was something bigger inside that was calling. There's always something bigger that's calling. But again, Anna, many people have made mistakes, moved at the wrong time, and later on it was chaos, very catastrophic. So what do you have to say? Because there are a lot of people listening to us right now, and at the end of the day, they might just have to move after this session today. And so we don't want everybody to move at the wrong time. So
Right.
what do you have to say on when is the right time to know that this is the time for me to move? Maybe, do I have to save 20,000 US dollars before moving? Do I have to get my own house mortgage completely paid before moving? Do I have to get my international passport ready before moving? Do
Right.
I have to? What do I have to do before I move? Just so that I shouldn't make the mistake of coming back to my cage after I've been liberated.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. So, first off, I want to say that even if you've been liberated from your cage
Yeah.
and you have to run back because maybe you just need to regather your strength and venture back out again.
Yep.
I think that can be definitely be a part of people's journey, whether it be when I started my business in 2020, I, for example, was free, but it's not like the finances were just hitting overnight. So I knew that there was a good chance that I was going to go back into having a job. So I did go back into having I guess a corporate job for like a year and a half during there. But I was specific in choosing a job that I knew would give me the flexibility to be able to continue to grow my business.
I love that.
So I don't want to give people the wrong impression that let's say you start a business or you take a risk and maybe you have setbacks along the way and maybe you have to pivot into a job again for a little while, pivot back out. I don't think that anyone should see that as a failure. I would see it more as a rite of passage. That when you're going after your dream, sometimes it's not always a straight line. I like to tell people that sometimes you may have to take one step backward to take 3 steps forward, and sometimes you have to make lateral moves. So it's not always just there's no harm, there's no shame in needing to pivot in pursuit of your dream. So I think that's the first thing I want to make clear. There is nothing wrong. I think sometimes there's this pressure out there. I think it's status, it's image, it's social media. It's like, oh, if you show any signs of weaknesses or not being successful, then everyone's going to see through me, you know? But I think what's more important is being honest about the journey. So I feel like I wouldn't be authentic if I wasn't here being honest about the journey. I started my business. I racked up credit card debt the first year. I went into a job for a year and a half, pivoting back into that. When I decided to move from that job into my business full time, a few of the signs that let me know it was the right timing for me was that felt like a natural ending to that job where it was like, I just could feel that this is naturally ending. My business has been slowly growing. And so I took a risk. I didn't have proof, but I think another sign was I did have clients. Speaking of, setbacks, like I don't see this as a setback because I love my mom, but I was a little bit nervous going from my job to my business full time. And so for 6 months, I moved back in with my mom.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, my mom loved it, but for me, I was like, this makes sense. So I think people don't talk about this because they got to project this like perfect image of success or can never show that there's ups and downs or struggles. You might have months or years where the money is coming and you might have months or years where it's just not working that way. And so I guess to answer your question, this is going to be unique to you. I think a few of the questions you really need to sit with for yourself are really thinking about what is my tolerance for risk?
Okay.
because not everyone has the same tolerance for risk. I have a couple of friends who are also aspiring entrepreneurs, kind of more early stages, thinking about starting their businesses, but they may not have the same tolerance for risk that I do or the same life situation. So their path to entrepreneurship might look different. For me, I got to a point where it was just a decision where it was worth it to me to pursue what I wanted, even if it all fell down, versus stay where I was. But you have to have that conversation with yourself about, what is my tolerance for risk? What sacrifices am I willing to make? I'm not saying that everyone will have to make those kind of sacrifices. I just think it's good to be realistic in that sense. Like, I know I say be unrealistic, but this is where it might be good to be a little bit realistic and think about what sacrifices am I willing to make for my dream? Because I knew I was willing to run up credit cards. I was willing to move in with my mom. Like, I was willing to take the plunge and go full time on this, even if it meant at some point I might have to supplement my income. So I think just having those honest conversations with yourself about what you're willing to do for this. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, I don't think people should feel this pressure to just like, oh, one day you're a full-time employee and now you're a full-time entrepreneur. Like, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a journey.
Yeah,
it's a journey,
absolutely.
and give yourself permission to walk the journey.
I really enjoyed that. And I feel like hitting the table again.
Yes.
I feel like hitting the table again. Hannah, you said something that I don't know how our audience felt it, or how they saw it, how they listened to that. But to me, it meant a lot, just a lot. You talked about spending not 1 month, not 2 months, not 3 months, not 4, not even 5, 6 months with your mom. And just trying to re-strategize to bounce back. And you were excited about that. And that was a game changer, And that is something that that I would really love to reiterate, even as we continue with this conversation. Because if you are thinking of pivoting, even as an entrepreneur, boy, you need a backup plan. If the worst comes to the worst, you can land there. It could be your family, and most of the cases it's the family. So it means your relationship with your family has to be stronger than ever before, and that should be your priority investment, right? Because again, your clients can quit, your clients can be angry with you and terminate contract, whatever. But your family might not do that to you because they see the effort you're putting in. So if the worst comes to the worst, you can always come back to your family, and they will really give you that support. There will be that learning part that you can always learn and kick off at any time, which I really, really, really appreciate that particular point. So looking at it from vision to action. So I see vision. So I see strategies. I see time frames. I see activities, and I see habits. So from vision, you had a vision to become the owner and the founder and the keynote speaker and a consultant. And that was just a vision. Like you needed to come out with strategies, you needed to come out with time frames, you needed to come out with activities, you needed to come out with what we call now habits that could enable, those are daily habits that you do. So what are some habits that you put in every single day that enables you to remain the owner, to remain the consultant and the corporate trainer that you are?
So before I answer the question about habits, one thing I would say is that we're all built differently. So there are people out there that in order for them to start a business, they're going to build out a detailed business plan. They're going to know exactly everything they're going to do.
Yeah.
That works for some people. I'm not quite wired that way. I started with the vision. I did a lot of experimentation. And it's actually only been a few years into business where I feel like I'm starting to get more into the planning. Before it was more vision, strategic thinking, experimentation. But yes, now that I've gotten further along, I realize that if I want to not only sustain in my business, but I want to grow in my business, then I have to be willing to be disciplined enough to come up with some plan. Now, it doesn't have to be like super detailed. Some people thrive in that. I'm more like some plan and flexibility. But I think I had to get to a point, at least for me, where I figure out kind of what are my non-negotiables and what are the things that I know I have to stay committed to, because we can't do everything. We don't have time and energy for everything.
Yeah.
And so even just strategizing, a few habits that are tied to where my business is at right now. So right now, the bulk of my business is in corporate leadership consulting. So I often will lead multi-day leadership offsites for clients where they're bringing people together, they're getting them all on the same page, improving relationships, that sort of thing. That's the bulk of what I do in my business. So there are certain habits that I do that are tied to maintaining my business as it is right now. I think some of those habits are around the quality that I deliver for my clients, more of the things that happen inside of that relationship in terms of the meetings that we have, the quality that I deliver, habits around that those processes. But it's not like that is something you see. That's on the back end of my business. But I think that then I have to think of habits that are driving where I want my business to be in 3 years or 5 years. So they might be things that aren't necessarily yielding money yet. So I think it's good to have some habits that are tied to where your money and your business is actually coming from, but then also have some habits that you maintain and are committed to based on where you want your business to be in the future. So for me, some of the habits I maintain are first with self. I don't think people talk about this a lot, but for me, in order for me to be the best in my business, I have to really be taking good care of myself. So for me, it starts with that foundation of self-care, which for me is I journal a lot. I mean, I don't necessarily spend hours, but I would say most days I am doing a journaling practice in the morning to go from kind of where I'm at to where I need to be. So it might look like I often will do a gratitude practice of writing down the things I'm grateful for. I will rewrite my goals down. And then I might write down a few tasks that I have for the day. So that's kind of a daily habit, but it's more of a ritual. I heard this recently that a ritual is a habit with a soul. I heard this in a book that I'm listening to, but it's part of my morning routine when I have my coffee. Let me get centered. Let me really look at remind myself of what my goals are, my vision, and then what are the three things. Sometimes it's just three things. What are the three things I need to do today to make that happen? So that's one habit or ritual that I do is that journaling. Another one is going to the gym for me because that gives me energy. So whatever it is for you, for me it's going to the gym or going for a walk. So those help me be at my best. And then I've also committed this year to producing the Solve Ruled podcast every week. So every week, Thursdays, 12 o'clock Central Standard Time, I produce an episode. And so even though that habit isn't yielding big money in my business, it's a part of where I see my business going. So that's something that I've committed to on a weekly basis. So in addition to that, it is posting on social media. So posting on LinkedIn or Instagram, that's another habit. And then also looking for opportunities in the community to go to networking events. So that's another big part of it feeds my soul in terms of building connection with other people and staying energized because I work alone, but also looking for new opportunities, being exposed to new things sparks my creativity. So I try to commit to going to in-person networking events, a couple times a month.
I love that. So I hope you picked your own 2 or 3, 4, 5 habits. So it's not just about having a vision. You need to come out with a plan on how to get the vision out there. And what do? You need to first come out with a strategy, identify the goals, identify the time frames, identify the activities, and then the habits, like you talked about, that you have to begin to practice every single day. Because guess what? You are actually your daily habits. So what you consistently do eventually becomes you. That is why habits are powerful. Habits begets character, and your character begets you. And so, if you are actually looking forward to advertising the Global Speakers Advantage podcast, this is the time. And because you have not yet reached out to us, the time is still available. And so think about that. So coming back to you, Anna, let's look at the speaking industry right now. So the statistics revealed by the National Speakers Association stipulates that by 2025, this year, we're going to be having over 4.6 billion US dollars in circulation within the speaking industry, only in the United States of America, not all around the world. So how do you see this happening? Looking at the trend in the speaking industry in the United States, do you think that the speaking industry, with the number of people coming in every day, thousands every day, do you think that in the next 2 years, the speaking industry will be a place where every person who believes has a story to share could actually begin a career as a speaker?
Yeah, so what I would say to that is I have an abundance mindset
Okay.
when it comes to life and when it comes to speaking.
Okay.
So I think, buried in, in the question that you're asking is there space for me in the speaking
Absolutely.
world? And we're probably all asking ourselves that, oh, is a lot of money being spent?
Yep.
There's also a lot of public speakers out there. Is there space for me and my story? Is there space for me and my message? But I
Yeah.
think that the answer is absolutely yes. I think
Okay.
that intuitively, as technology becomes more dominant, AI becomes more
Yeah.
dominant, like the need for authentic communication, authentic connection, and speaking is a way where people get a chance to do that. I mean, even though it's not speaking per se, when I go do my leadership offsites and I'm with people for 3 days, we're spending quality time for 3 days. A lot of times these people haven't seen each other in a year. They work remotely. They hardly know each other. And those are the moments where they get to come together and experience being human. And so if you're a speaker, I think it's very similar where people are coming together for these conferences, these events. Maybe it's been months since they've physically been in person with the people that they work with or people in their industry. And so it's really giving people an experience. So the appetite is there. And then I also think there's always an appetite for just being exposed to new ideas, being exposed to new ideas from new people, because even though Oliver and I, we have some of the same ideas, how we say it, who we say it to, it's going to be different. So I know that for anyone listening out there, you have a unique story that is as unique as you are. So absolutely, there's room, and we need that.
Okay.
We need that. We need your perspective.
Yeah. We do need that. And this is the point. A lot of people are afraid with the disruption AI is bringing on the table right now. Like AI is replacing. In fact, there's statistics that from Forbes that says that by 2030, the world, in fact, over 2 billion people lost their jobs. By 2030, over 2 billion people lost their jobs to AI, automation, artificial intelligence, and all of that. And so, including some speakers, by the way. So what word of encouragement can you give to the speakers watching us right now that AI will not soon take over their gigs?
Oh gosh.
And what do they need to start doing right now?
I genuinely think there will never be anything that can replace pure, authentic, genuine human connection. And you can't get that from AI. You can't get that from a machine.
Yeah.
There is a hunger for realness, and I just think that's going to continue to increase the more we have AI. I don't have any concerns about that. And I also want to circle back to an abundance mindset, which is believing if you have an abundance mindset, then you don't allow yourselves to feel threatened by these types of statistics, because you're going to lean into the belief that there is enough opportunity for everyone. Maybe the market is changing and AI is taking jobs, but someone with an abundance mindset would ask the question, what new opportunities will present themselves with these shifts? And so I think having an abundance mindset has always seen the positive, and holding that belief deeply, which I do, that there will always be enough. There will be enough for all of us. Just because Oliver is speaking and I'm speaking and there's AI doesn't mean that there's not enough for me.
Yeah.
And so I think, but if you go out there with the mindset and attitude of fear and, oh, someone's going to take my job, or, oh, it's too competitive, it's too saturated, then that's what you're going to find, because that's the lens that you're looking at it through. So absolutely go into it with an abundance mindset and that creativity and that innovation, because I think even as things change, we will just find new ways to be creative and innovate, and there's always going to be a place for the human spirit.
I love that. And actually, AI, like you said, AI is a tool.
Right.
So use it as a tool, not as a competitor. So now, do you use ChatGPT?
Yes, I
guess
do.
so. Then you use Canva.
Yes.
I guess so. Do you use editing software like what are the video editing software do you use?
Too lazy for that. I do it live. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay. So
No,
you see,
yeah.
so I use all of these, as a tools, and there's never a day one of my tools can be competing with me,
Right.
because I'm the thinker, I'm the thought leader. So I actually put the prompts like prompt engineering, put what I expect him to give, and so I actually use AI as assistive learning, how to facilitate my research and my work, not as I'm like scared that it would take over the whole industry. And it's good. It's high time us as speakers we crack the code, by shifting the mindset of what if to I can, irrespective of what is happening. I can. And that has to do with confidence. You talk so much about confidence, how we need confidence to do the work we are doing, no matter the circumstances or the challenges we're going through. And so I had an epiphany yesterday when I was listening to one of my coaches on YouTube, Myron Golden. So he talked about a very powerful concept. He said, your potential is so important and so powerful. And what you don't know is what you pay taxes for. So he said he spent a lot of millions, a lot of millions US dollars buying houses in the past, and he used a lot of money to pay taxes. And so he had to work with the coach, with a tax expert, who told him that, so you don't need to pay taxes, all of the houses you have. And he thought he was kidding. And before he noticed, they just had sat in a session, and the coach was able to walk him through a process where you rather make more money from buying more houses instead of paying taxes with money. And at the end of the day, he was like, what? So the point I'm making is this, right? A lot of people are spending money every day for ignorant. It's like they're paying taxes to the ignorant they don't. So it's a little bit like, okay, I want to use some illustration, right? So ask me any question you think I don't know.
That's a very hard question. I'm really seeing my wheels are really spinning.
Yeah, ask me a question you think I know. Like anything you think I know. I know you don't know. You don't. There are a lot of things I don't know. You don't know I know, and a lot of things you know I know. So,
what are the 4 main color seasons?
Okay. Thank you. So we have winter, spring, summer, and autumn. Is it? It's autumn.
Yes. And what?
For the answer I did not give you. So the answer I gave you, I don't have to pay you for it. And that is the illustration. That is life. So we are going to spend a lot of money paying for what we don't know. And we will not spend any money paying for what we know. And so the question we're asking our audience listening to us is, okay, what do you know now that you don't longer pay money for, that you used to pay money for in the past? That you have that same experience, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of, this is a powerful kind of topic that you're pivoting into, because I think there's 2 pieces with this. I think I like the question you're asking the audience of what do you know? Because I think the things you do know right now, there is a way to monetize that.
There we go.
Yes, there is a way to monetize it. And I think about things I knew years ago that I could have monetized, but I didn't have the confidence to monetize those things. And so, but as you grow throughout life, you learn new things, you invest in yourself, you'll find new knowledge to monetize.
Exactly.
But to your point, the things you don't know that you might need for your business, you will pay other people for that. But I will say that I have an abundance mindset with that as well, where I will pay other people for the things that I really know is better taken care of by someone else. So it just becomes a judgment call, and how much time you have, and
Exactly.
and where your time is best used. But
I love that. And so even as we close the curtains of this conversation, so we are leaving our audience with like challenging them to go beyond the ordinary and where they are right now. So it's high time you start asking yourself, what do I don't know that I need to know? And start making plans on getting that. Because if you don't, you keep on spending a lot of resources, always to catch up, always to pay taxes to that thing which you don't know. And you have the potentials to know. That's the good news. Like any one of us here. I love that. So, Tana, what are your closing words to our followers? We talked about your career from uniform to the corporate America to now the owner of Inspirate, and your business experience and moving around the United States and soon to be going around the world, speaking and sharing your story and touching lives. So, what words of encouragement, what words of hope can you give to somebody watching us right now on how to position his or herself in a place where they win, they win in life? Yeah.
So I think that there's often a lot of emphasis put on, even though I agree with you that there's things we could be learning that we're not. I think there's a lot of times emphasis put on, I don't have enough expertise. Yep. I'm not ready. Kind of like holding ourselves back because we think we got to take 10 more courses, or we've got to, wait for things to be perfect to begin. And so I think that's the biggest thing I would leave you with is don't wait for everything to be perfect. Don't wait for, to have 10 more courses on the subject or whatever it may be. Start with what you know now, because I really believe that each and every person has something in them, whether it be an idea, whether it be a message to share with people that is ready right now. Yeah. You may have something you're going to do later that you're not ready for right now, but you have something right now that you're ready for. And so that is one of the big things I would share. And the other thing I would share is that a lot of our emphasis is put on the external, how we look to other people, what we do in our external world, but I firmly believe that 80% of the work we need to do is internal. So as entrepreneurs, a lot of times people only see what we're doing on the outside, what we're doing out in the public sphere, but they don't realize that 20% you see is only possible because of the 80% that we're putting into ourselves. So even if you're in a position where you don't know what you can do just yet, you don't know what your move is, there is a move that you have right now, which is to put that 80% into yourself. And that is that getting clear on who you are, getting clear on what you really want, what your vision is, what your goals are, working on building self-belief. So really brainwashing yourself into believing that this idea that you have is possible, loving yourself, all of these things, taking care of yourself. So that's the 80%. And you can do that no matter what hellacious life circumstances you are in, because I've been there. You can be in rough circumstances, but you can focus on that 80%. And when you build yourself up internally, then you're going to get strong, you're going to have that resilience, and then you're going to have that moment of clarity where you're like, okay, I know I'm ready to move in a certain direction. So investing in yourself will never be a waste.
Wow.
And you can do that right now.
Boom. There we go.
Right.
So how do people get to you? Maybe there's a CEO right now, a company owner who wants you to come and train in their teams or speak in a conference in Africa, in Asia, in Europe. So how can they reach out to you, Hannah?
Sure. Well, I am on LinkedIn, so you can search for me on LinkedIn, Hannah Holden. Okay. My website is www.inspiritcoach.com. Okay. So you can search for me there. And then I am also on Instagram on a few different places. So probably the best one to give you is the Instagram for the podcast. If you want to check that out, it's the Self Ruled Podcast. So it's SELV ruled, Self Ruled. So the Instagram handle is at Self Ruled Podcast.
Great. SELV. Take note.
Yes.
Self Ruled.
SELV RULED. Correct. Yes, and I produce a episode every single week, and my podcast is really geared towards these type of messages, not so much the corporate leadership, but more so empowering you to claim your purpose, build self-belief, go after what you really want in life. That's really the tone of the podcast. So
yeah, great. I love that. And I'm a big fan of her podcast, and it's been a huge blessing and inspiration to me. And thank you so much, Anna, for all you're doing to the clients, to the people out there you're serving, and for the amazing podcast, Joe, and for being here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Oliver, and thank you all for tuning in and listening to us.
Great.
Thank you.
So if you're still there, congratulations. So we'll be flying to Dallas, Texas for our Purpose Conference 2025. So if you haven't gotten your ticket, get to www.talkspeakers.com. Grab your ticket and let's meet in Dallas, Texas on the 21st of June, 2025. So we cannot wait to see you there. So remember, we're going to have a virtual opportunity for people to attend the event all around the world virtually. But if you are in the United States right now, we strongly recommend that you get a ticket and come. Let's meet in Dallas, Texas. So that was it for today. It was working. It was actually the Global Speakers Advantage podcast, and I was your host, Oliver Shaw. And I had my amazing guest, Hannah Holden. Until we meet again on Tuesday next week, see you at the top. And bye bye for now.
Bye.